Welcome to History That Doesn't Suck. I am your professor, Greg Jackson, and we are so very done with the progressive era. We're done with this volume, Kelsi.
Yes, we are.
And so it is time for an epilogue. Time to discuss a little bit, bring out a few stories we didn't get to. We're excited to do that tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
There are. It's the volume of, well, as we were just saying, as we were trying the mics, right? Like the history that's so very frequently
overlooked.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or just skimmed over.
Anyhow, we'll save that for a second. Of course, Kelsi Dines, the official welcome and salutation. Always a pleasure to have you in my dungeon little recording
Always
space.
Happy to be here.
Yes. You don't have to lie about that. This is a very small room.
It's a very small room.
But it gives us great sound, and that's what we're here for.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. We'll note that we miss Zach.
We do. We were saying that. It's not the same without Zach.
It isn't. He isn't. He left us for Harvard Law.
Yeah, what a jerk.
I know. Some people just make poor choices. And,
I agree.
That was not Zach. He did not do that. Really proud of him. And of course, in his honor, let me just say, go Sox. Because he will love hearing that.
I'm sure he will.
He will.
I'm sure he has a lot of time for baseball.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that. We're going to make an asterisk note on pronunciation.
Sure. We
Let's
can do that.
So, Body Island.
Yes.
Because it's super sad.
It is. I looked it up.
Yep.
We did have somebody...
this is the Wright Brothers episode.
Yeah,
to be clear.
for the Wright Brothers.
Yep.
Message in saying that it was pronounced Bodie. And so then we decided to look it up to make sure.
As we do.
Yes.
Yep.
Double check and triple check, all those things. And I
Lessons learned.
did find out that according to the Outer Banks, which is where it is pronounced body.
But there is some
I'm sure that
regional
there are other
pronunciations,
people
yes.
there that will pronounce it
Because
both ways.
they had a note on that, right? Specifically.
Yeah. Like some people will pronounce it either way. So
Right.
It's not necessarily that it's wrong. Most people pronounce it body.
Tomato.
Yeah. I'm sure that if you say it out there, they'll know what you're
I'm
talking
sure there are
about.
strong feelings, and we are not getting in
No.
to this.
But they'll still be like, yeah, it's over there.
Yeah.
That's the way to get to it.
So after you've listened to the episode and now you feel compelled to go visit,
Which you
Kitty
probably
Hawk.
should.
100%.
I think everybody probably should at some point in their life.
I would love to do that. I can't say I have.
I haven't
but,
either.
Doing this podcast has filled me with, my poor children at some point are going to have a very Griswold, RV vacation. I don't know which summer it is, but it's coming. And
I definitely don't plan road trips around random historical markers ever. Much to
never.
the dismay of my poor husband, and probably as my children get older, to their dismay as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, yeah. At any rate, they'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Yes, they will.
Don't be blown away if you hear either pronunciation.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
You can handle it. Okay. So that's the only note on that one.
I haven't heard anything else
Yep.
yet.
So let's go ahead and we want to know, before we get into some of the material here, some of the stories, we do have another live show coming up. We did one back in January out in Tennessee. It's actually the same show. So to give some greater insight, this is not a recording episode and put it on the RSS feed. I've written a stage show. It is basically the episode that will never be on the RSS feed. The title is The Unlikely Union. The protagonist of the story is the union itself, the idea of the union between the states. So in just over an hour and a half, I take you from the original idea through all that history and all the fun stories that go with it, the scary stories that go with it.
The not so fun stories.
Yep. And we get through well over a century of history, go from the Revolution up to the Civil War. So if that sounds interesting to you, well, we are gonna do this for a local high school here in Utah. We're very excited about that. But if you're not enrolled in a high school, in this high school here in Utah, that's not gonna fly. So we'll do that in December. But if you'd like to join us in New York City, the show will be running January 14th, 15th, and 16th at the Triad Theater, Midtown.
I think so. I'm not entirely familiar with the exact location of the theater.
No worries. We're out in Utah. I don't think anyone expects us to have New York down backwards and forwards. I've only become familiar with it thanks to History Channel in the last year or so. I think we're actually just above Midtown. It's about 72nd Street. So anyhow, please do come out and join us if you feel so inclined. And if the physical distance is an issue, it'll be live streamed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Live
There's
streamed.
the word. I'm tired. Yeah, we're going to be live streaming on the, I believe it's the last evening. Anyhow, we will, you can get all the details on the website. So HTDSpodcast.com.
Yeah.
And there you go, whether you want to watch the live stream or if you want to join us in person. And we will be giving a discount to patrons. So Patreon, there you go. I think we've covered all the things. Oh, wait, you were going to talk about the newsletters.
Right. We have newsletters.
In brevity.
Yes. I'll do it really quick. We do have newsletters now. I think those are fairly new.
They are new.
Yes.
Newsletters.
New newsletters. So funny.
Stop me. Don't.
So we have 3. There's one that comes out every week that is, it's kind of just a fun little lighthearted thing that has stories and memes, as those who follow us on social media know how great our memes are.
So we got
not to pat myself on the back there at all.
Not in the least bit. No.
And then there's one that comes out monthly. That's kind of Greg's
Connected
take
history.
on
things related to today. Yeah.
Kind of some current event stuff, I think. And then there's one that is a patron exclusive newsletter as well that I believe comes out on our off weeks.
Yes.
It's a primary source is what it's called. And it kind of just goes into the sources that we used for that most recent episode, why that was a good source. So, if you are interested in that, it's available to patrons.
So, again, I'd say just go to our website.
Yeah, and I think that you can sign up on the website for any of those.
So there
all
we go.
3 of them. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, it doesn't matter which one or how many. Like, you should sign up for at least one of them. They're great. I like reading them.
Well, I'm sold. I'm going to go sign up.
Good.
Thanks, Kelsi.
You should.
All right. Let's go ahead and jump into these episodes, shall we?
Yes.
Just kind of explore some things that there's so much in here that
it was just
get into the episodes.
Each episode probably could have been 2 or 3 at least.
The case, isn't it? As I was working on the election of 1912 in recent weeks, mentioned it while I was messaging with a patron, and she said, "Oh, well, you could divide that into 2. There's so much going on." I'm like, "Yes, but
I could,
but I do actually want to get us through U.S. history at some point. That was the original goal. This is meant to be digestible.
That's a good goal. But we could have split each of these up into 2 or 3 episodes.
Well, of course, right? I mean, you've got entire podcasts, books, you name it.
That's true.
Dedicated to just one slice of history. But that's not what I want to do. This is intended to be a survey. All that said, though, Ellis Island.
That one was a really interesting one.
That one was kind of a blast.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I say it every time. It's a broken record. I didn't know most of this stuff, right? Like, you have to go through stuff so quickly when you're learning in school that kind of a lot of that in-depth stuff, you just don't get to it. And so that one was a lot of fun to research and learn about.
Yeah, I can't recall if I've given this spiel on an epilogue at any point, but I guess I'll give it now if I haven't previously. I mean, it's where I really feel for history teachers. The things that are asked of them. And it's even the case on some level at the university. I mean, that said, you got to draw lines somewhere, right? I mean, so it's a rock and a hard place. But
it is.
Let's say you're a K through 12 teacher and you're told, well, teach U.S. history, and you now have one academic year to do it. Well, you can't do what's happening
do what we do.
Yeah,
it's taken us 5 years, 5.5 years almost.
Yes,
to get to this point.
I mean, sure, this is every other week, but all the same, it's intense research, and
no way that you can cover everything in just 1 year.
So naturally, it turns into how the country start, our existential crisis, the Civil War.
Yeah,
and Kitty Hawk doesn't make it in, or
it just gets kind of like the Wright brothers flew for the first time, and that's kind of
moving on. Yeah. So anyhow, To Ellis Island, though, first of all, we did imagine that being a much bigger thing.
We did. I remember back in the 2 volumes ago when we talked about the Brooklyn Bridge was just going to be the Brooklyn Bridge, the Statue of Liberty, and Ellis Island. Yeah. All in one episode. And then we realized that there was no way to do that.
Yep.
And still do it justice.
And it all kept getting broken apart.
Yep. And now here we are saying, I wish that I could have done more about Ellis Island. Or immigration in general.
Right. Well, we initially thought Ellis Island will, of course, get the lion's share, but we're going to talk about all these other
immigration points.
Yes, because they existed all around the nation. Particularly, we wanted, and since we couldn't get to it in the episode, we'll call it out now. Yeah, Angel Island.
Yeah.
On California's coast, up in the San Francisco area.
Yeah, it did come in a little later than Ellis Island. I think it was about 20 years later because it opened in 1910.
Right. But we're in this progressive era, and that's where we were going to put them. If I'm recalling correctly, we were going to start with Ellis Island, and then we're going to roll in to kind of keep the chronology.
Yeah, some of these other points. And I think we were planning on talking more so about Angel Island than some of these other ones, because a lot of the other ones were really small.
Yeah.
And didn't have a ton of immigrants come through.
Yeah, Ellis Island is the behemoth, right? And that's why it ended up being the episode. Yeah. But Angel Island was definitely an honorable mention for, lack of a better way to frame it. And I think it's really interesting that that's where you have Chinese immigration coming through, even with the ban that's still in place on Chinese nationals being able to naturalize as U.S. citizens. So there's just there were a lot of moving parts to that story that I think made it hard to feel like we could fit it in just in a little section of an episode. It wasn't going to be, a 3-minute nod.
Yeah.
But we want to mention it now in case that's really grabbing you. By all means, go look into this. Go get a book. Check this out.
I learned a lot about it as we were researching for it. And I've been to San Francisco several times and still, went out to Alcatraz Island a lot. And
there's no end of things to do.
Exactly. But Angel Island, it was never something on my radar at all because I had never really heard about it. And so as I was researching for that episode and looking at all of that, I'm like, I wish that I had gone and seen that when I was out there last. But next time. I know. I have a list.
Yes.
It's really long.
Okay, well, we'll get the RV. We talked before we talked about this, and it will be terrible.
It will be.
So, and there are a few stories that I'm able to identify, and I'm looking forward to telling it, and it works into the podcast really well. And then there are other pieces where keeping it in the narration form,
they don't quite make it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit in a, and of course, then coming back to that whole bigger. It's a survey. How long can I stall out, essentially, in the same space, kind of telling similar stories. Anyhow, so we'll see if maybe there's an angle for a little Angel Island.
There probably
later.
is. I mean, it did last until 1940. So.
Right. So you may see it surface yet, but if it doesn't, there you go.
Or if you really want to look into it now.
Yeah,
definitely
don't
recommend
wait on
that.
Us. Absolutely.
It was just a lot of really cool stories.
So another thing that goes along with Ellis Island, it's kind of textbook material. And I super meant to get it in. It didn't fit with Ellis Island because Ellis Island was such a huge story. I'm very happy with how that episode turned out.
I think it was great.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
So I wouldn't change it for the world, but kind of textbook. Looking out in Chicago, Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr, they founded what's known as Hull House. They basically bought a dilapidated-ish mansion in the Chicago area. We're in the 1880s. And they turned it into a settlement home for newly arriving immigrants from Europe. So, of course, if you remember the Ellis Island episode, and you've got those stairways at the end, right? There's the one that you go to if you're going to go take a train and head elsewhere in the country, as opposed to those who are going to take the ferry and head to New York
itself,
right? And then, of course, those who are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But those who were getting on the train and heading out to Chicago, well, there's a chance that they could have ended up at Hull House. So that's where, initially I thought, we'll connect that. Cool. This whole episode has taken 50 minutes. This is yet another story. It doesn't fit. So I did want to kind of mention it because, at least in my experience with U.S. history, it feels very like check mark. You got to mention it when you're doing progressive era. So check. But to tease it out just a little bit more, Jane Addams, I mean, she's famous around 1910. She is, you think about Ida Tarbell, if you remember back to the episode in which she took John D. Rockefeller on. Mm-hmm. And she became basically the most famous woman in America for a little bit. Well, Jane Addams, she was right up there with Ida in terms of people know her. And over the years to come, there were 400 settlement houses modeled after Hull House across the nation.
Oh. Well, I wasn't expecting to learn anything new today, but I
did. Yeah. Well, I am sorry to disappoint, Kelsi. Oh. So, and we sigh in unison. I don't know what to make of that. Okay. Anything else on Ellis Island? I think those were kind of like the two big things, right? Yeah. Oh, no. There's one other thing.
Oh, right.
NPS is amazing, right? We'll just plug the National Park Service.
I am, yeah, that's right. So I was trying to find, I think we had some conflicting sources.
Yes.
That were saying, oh, well, the medical exams happened before you went up the stairs or after you went up the stairs, and they used that as part of it. And we were trying to figure out what actually happened, because that's what we do.
That is what we. So I have read through multiple sources, secondary, primary, to the extent I can get my hands on those.
Yeah, there's not a lot of those, but
they were harder. Yeah. Especially at the pace if only I could take off to archives in New York for just one episode. But I mean, I've got the best and brightest books in front of me. And I'm seeing these contradictions, and I remember I don't remember if I texted or called you, but I was like, Kelsi, please.
Probably both.
Yeah, probably. Like within 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
Kelsi, I need help.
You didn't answer. I'm going to call you now.
Yeah. I know it's 3 a.m. I
don't care.
No. I've never called you at 3.
Not at 3.
No.
Just 11:59. It's fine.
I know, it's fine. You're up. I don't see the problem.
I wish I could say I wasn't, but that's not true.
But... Well, I need to keep writing the freaking episode, and just like, I can't get down this rabbit hole. Can you go down this rabbit hole for me?
And down the rabbit hole I went, and I think I called because I've gotten used to calling all sorts of random places and saying, "Hey, I work for this podcast, and I'm trying to find this really obscure random information that I can't find anywhere else. Please help me." And it was like a Friday afternoon, and I left a message at the Ellis Island.
Yeah, end of day.
Yeah.
So we're 2 hours off.
Yeah. So I was like, well, they're not going to answer me. And I get a call Saturday morning. It woke me up because they're 2 hours ahead of us. Right. And the most awesome park ranger answered our question and said, it really just depends on what day it was, what doctors it was, what time of year it was, like how many boats were coming in. So all of those sources were technically right.
Yep.
There were just so many variables that it was impossible to say, well, it always happened here.
Well, and that is where the episode ultimately took the shape it did, in which I gave, trying to speak to that large experience. I didn't say, here's this one specific immigrant, we're going to follow this experience, and kind of did this composite angle.
Yeah, and I think that worked out really well.
I did. I was happy with it. Yeah. Well, okay. Definitely enough on Ellis Island. So let's go ahead and take a breather. Get a little ad break in, and then when we come back, we'll carry on with some other fun stories.
Perfect.
And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So, enough on Ellis Island. Moving right along, women's movement.
I really enjoyed this one. Not simply because it's women's history, which I find very interesting, but because, once again, it's one of those things that's kind of just really glossed over, right?
It super is. Yes.
I knew the names. Susan B. Anthony, right? That was the main one.
Yep.
Thanks to her appearance on the silver dollar, right?
Right.
So I have one of those still, which I'm really proud of. And then less familiar, but had heard the name, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, right?
Yeah.
But that was it.
So like Alice Paul.
Never heard of her.
Yeah.
Before this.
Okay.
I did hear My first introduction to hunger strikes and forced feedings was from BBC's Called Midwife show, because they have an episode where there's like a British suffragist who they're working with, and she kind of talks about
Suffragist or suffragette?
Suffragist.
Okay. Excellent. You were paying attention
I
then,
was paying
even if this is new information. Yeah.
I do always pay attention.
Oh, I know, Kelsi. I know.
But hearing more about it, it gives me shudders every time to think about it. I'm just like, I don't know. As I listen to all of that, I don't know if I could have been like that kind of a person. I like to think that I could, but really,
we all
knowing myself, I've been like, that's a really awesome idea, but I can't do that.
Right.
So it gave me a greater respect for the people that were able to kind of put up with that kind of treatment, because it's kind of insane.
Twice a day, weeks of that.
Yeah. I couldn't.
That is so many thoughts at once. First of all, it's part of where the officials that did this thought, surely, right, this will work. They will give way. We will get back to normal
life.
Yeah.
I
guess. They themselves felt like they're in between a rock and a hard place. Obviously, we look back and say, well, you freaking let them vote like humans.
Yeah.
Yet you have these police. They have women in their charge, and with all the gender norms being what they are, last thing they want, you remember, I got into this in the episode. I'll try to not be so repetitive, but yeah, they're terrified of these women dying on their watch. And yet, what do they end up torturing them?
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's the like best case scenario. That's not even to get into the actual abuse situations.
Oh yeah,
right. That we also covered in
talked about.
Which I'll tell you, that was new for me. I was not aware of the degree.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not pretty, and I think a lot of times we just want to hear the pretty history, right? We don't want to talk about the stuff that's uncomfortable. We don't want to talk about the stuff that.
Well, and the triumph feels good.
Yeah.
Right? So we can talk about the amendment. It comes full circle. Right? But
yeah, we could talk about how they fought for it, but we don't want to go into the details
of how they suffered for it.
That all happened.
Yeah.
So that was all very eye-opening. Also, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Never heard of that before.
Yeah. See, and this is where, as a historian, I always have to like hit pause and remember things that
there are words.
Yes, that it's the everyone does this in their profession, right?
Yeah.
Like, I always try to remember this when I'm dealing with students, or the same way that I can talk to my computer programmer brother, and I'm pretty sure it's still English. At some point, he starts getting into.
I wouldn't make that assumption about computer programming. It may not be English.
I'll hear from my brother later.
Numbers and
it's just, it's what you know, right? And so the assumptions that we bring as to what general knowledge is, sometimes we tend to exaggerate it, right? It's difficult to remember. Okay, when someone doesn't spend 8+ hours a day on this one thing, they
have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so the shirtwaist fire, the greatest massive loss of life tragedy up until 9/11 in New York City. There's some qualifier on that, and now I can't remember if I mentioned that in the episode or not. Actually,
you might have.
Yeah, but if I didn't, anyhow, it definitely ranked up there. Obviously, 9/11 dwarfed it, but up to that point, it was very noteworthy in terms of just violent, tragic ends. In a mass incident in New York City. As
I was listening, I review the episodes, and as I was listening to that, I had to turn it off after that, because I was like, nope, I need to take a breather for a minute. Like, that was it was a lot.
Yeah.
Especially, the first time ever hearing about it. Or really knowing anything. I think I'd heard maybe the name. But.
Well, I'll match your confession. I paused that story at least twice. It might have been 3 times recording it.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't mean this like I'm a hardened person, but as a historian, history sounds nice and light and fun on one level when like you're a kid and whatnot. And then you get into it and you realize that like you do have those feel good stories. The Wright brothers. That was a feel good episode. That was great.
One. I loved that.
I can't wait to talk about that.
Me too.
But there's a lot of dark and difficult
kinds of stories.
Yeah. I've gotten used to that on some level. It's not that I've
not that you enjoy them, but like that those kinds of things happen.
Yeah. Like, we get to wars. I know.
Yeah, there's going to be
it's going to be ugly. And it's not just the ugly of like
people dying.
Yeah, and people dying in the way that you expect them to in war, right? Soldier honorably fighting for his nation, other soldier fighting honorably for his nation, and they shoot and no, it's gory, it's horrific, it is painful. There's PTSD. That's not even to talk about the diseases that are happening, and then let's get into the atrocities that end up happening as well. Like all of those things, they're a given when I go into it. But yeah, reading about, man, I'm gonna get choked up right now. Reading the way I wrote it, even, but reading about women, girls who they had warned about their conditions. They had protested. They went on strike just a year earlier. The strike was broken. They knew that this was a crap situation. It was still the best situation they had. I don't mean best as in it was good, but like they didn't have a better option. Yeah. So they stuck it out, and then they end up, so many of them, literally leaping to their deaths because
it was either that or burn.
Yeah, and that was the saner, better option in that horrific moment. Well, I'm glad we could go back down this road.
That was so fun. Thank you for that.
Hey, yeah, I'm not going to say my pleasure, but yeah. All that said, it was a very popular episode. It
was. We've had I think a lot of people who feel similarly.
I do.
That they
I think so too.
Had not heard these stories before. Yep. I mean, did not know that Inez Milholland was the basis for Wonder Woman. So that's pretty cool.
I mean, come on.
She's fantastic.
Right? It's a big takeaway. Now,
both Inez and Wonder Woman.
That story, yes. Yes.
I feel like I had to make that caveat there.
Sure. So the research team right now, all wonderful people whom I adore, Will King, Josh Topham, Diana Averill. So Diana was on this one. Mm-hmm. Wow, did she deep dive on Inez? She came back like with the Inez episode, and so that was a fun one. I
have to kind of pare this down a little bit.
This is that was a fun little moment to kind of say, okay, and this is how
this is all extremely interesting stuff.
Yep, but this is where we got to keep the focus.
Fit it in, yeah.
But 120. From Atlanta to the NAACP, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois.
Which I realized I'd been saying his name wrong every time I'd seen it, because I wanted to say Dubois.
Hello. The
sure curse of being the French speaker. Extremely difficult for you.
That whole episode, I know how to say his name, right? But, as I'm recording it, I knew it would just kick in. And I think I did Dubois, a few times. No. Read that sentence again.
Fix it.
Note to Molly. Don't use the first reading.
I am so sorry.
Yeah. But I will say that's an episode that I had been looking forward to for a while.
Yeah.
They're just they're fascinating figures, and still I learned so much researching and writing that. And I think I heard from
from several people.
I think I might have heard from every HTDS listener who is an alum of Tuskegee.
Probably.
There were a lot of comments. It was fun.
We always love hearing those.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. And
it's fun when it's something that you can relate to, or like that is a part of your life. You're like, hey.
Well, and it's not like this was lost on me in the moment, but as those sorts of emails come in, it kind of dawned on me more and more. Yes, I was telling the story of Booker T. Washington at that point in the episode, before we got into W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. I thought that was fun, right?
Yeah.
Booker, he is Booker to his friends, right? Like, that is how he's referred to. Dr. Du Bois, like people who know him intimately well. That's Dr. Du Bois.
It's Dr. Du Bois to you.
So even down to their personalities, right? They're so different.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it was fun hearing from people and from a number of teachers who said, I super knew nothing on this topic.
Yeah.
And now I'm incorporating this into the classroom. So
I love those ones where they're just like, this is something that I'd never heard of before, and now I'm really excited to share it with other people. I think that's especially stories like this, because this is another one I feel like kind of just gets glossed
it's
over.
This whole volume, though, isn't it?
It is.
It's the progressive era that gets this like really quick, like, the Gilded Age, it was the worst, which is often said because people don't really know much about the Gilded Age.
That's true.
Right? And
which we also talked about.
Yep. And then like the progressive era, and there's kind of this, TR, he's like on Mount Rushmore or something. So World War I.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just this little kind of asterisk.
9 months, got to get through it. The revolution took a long time. Civil War took a long time. Oh, shoot. We got held up for a week. Okay, there's like the Cold War or something. If we can get up to 1950, we'll call the class good. Progressive era, we'll spend a day.
Yeah.
Like,
these are the highlights of the progressive era.
These are the, and it's just the constrictions of trying to get through all that curriculum. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Anyhow, apparently that's going to be my theme for the evening, is my sympathy for teachers.
Especially with stuff like this.
Yes.
Because I'm sure these are stories we want to tell. Especially, I'm sure as a teacher, like, this is something you'd want to talk about, but like, you're just so bound by everything else that needs to be covered.
Yeah. Well, and another struggle that, my perspective here, I think it has some value. I don't know.
Probably a little bit.
Right? A little bit. The whole PhD in history thing and being a professor and all that jazz. But by the time you get a bachelor's degree in history, I think back to when I had achieved that. And of course, I was proud and pleased. My bachelor's degree, it was done. I'd written the senior paper. It was so long. It was shorter than these episodes I now crank out. But, at the time, this
felt like
this is
huge...
the magnus opus. Yes. Like, no one has written so many words. Of course, it's a fraction. It's nothing. But, I'm growing, right?
Yeah.
But, I look back on what I knew about any period of history then compared to what I do now, and I go, oh my gosh, that degree represented more learning how to read, learning how to write, learning how to think about, basically be a critical thinker. And I've got some information, just enough to not be able to answer questions at family reunions when someone has some stupid history trivia
random, obscure piece of trivia that you're just like, nope.
And then I can get the derisive, I thought you were a history major. Yeah.
And degree was wasted.
Yeah, and hey, everyone's got the equivalent, right, in their field. Conan O'Brien, I think it was, he's talked about detractor of being a Harvard grad. He got that his whole life. Really? Didn't know that? I thought you went to Harvard. Like, somehow made him God.
Or, that you suddenly know everything that there is to know in the world.
Exactly. Yes. So, all that said, I stuck through with graduate school, obviously, and ended up teaching at the university level. I did teach as a substitute, and one of those substitute gigs was long term. The teacher supposedly was sick, and then it turned out quit. And then they asked if I'd stick around, and anyhow, so I stuck around for a long time. And I got a small taste of what it's like to I've got some working knowledge of this material. Holy crap, I've got to teach a unit on what? Okay, I'm reading the textbook, right? Like, I'm trying to bring in what I can. And so all that to say, it's just, it's a tall order. It's difficult. So, all right. My further sympathies to those teachers. So let's go ahead and jump to the Halloween episode.
Oh boy,
let's just get a little candy here, a little trick or treat. Because I know you have thoughts.
I have so
Kelsi.
many thoughts.
What do you have to say?
Oh, just that I learned I really don't like horror, like at all. And
I'm sorry. I love Gothic so
I know
much.
you do. And that I'm kind of regretting saying, let's not do Poe again, which I never thought I'd say. Oh, man.
Did you find Lovecraft more
So not the ones that we read.
Okay, let's dial it
right?
back.
So
in the weeks building up, I'm working on
other
a book.
stuff.
Yeah, and
right?
so increasingly I've been throwing to you on stuff. It's like, hey,
find something for the Halloween episode.
Find the stories. Because last year was fun.
It was fun.
I want to stick with that model, right?
Yeah.
Like, do some stories.
And so we had tried to decide if we should do more Poe. Which would mean... I said
you can
that
never
probably
go wrong with more Edgar Allan Poe.
I'm regretting my choice now. But
by the way, Zach was texting me. Apparently, Harvard, as busy as it keeps him, it wasn't too busy to ask, "Hey, is there going to be another Poe episode?"
And you said no.
Yeah, and he just stopped talking.
He's
he ghosted me at that point. That's when the friendship was over. Yeah.
So I read a lot of Lovecraft's stuff, trying to find ones that fit the length of the episode, because a lot of what he wrote was really long.
Yep.
I have a friend.
Well, his most famous stuff.
His big stuff.
Yeah.
Like Cthulhu, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Which
huge.
We hope is how it's said. Oh my gosh, there's so much controversy on the pronunciation, but I think you nailed it.
I did. I have a friend who's very much
super
in love
with Lovecraft.
Yes. He loves him.
See where you're going.
I was actually asking him for advice on stories too. Because obviously this is not something I'm familiar with. And he's sending me all these ones to look at. So I was reading a bunch and I'm just like, oh my goodness. I miss Poe. But I think the ones that we ended up choosing, not so nightmare inducing for me, which was great. Still not my favorite. But I know that you like this kind of stuff. And a lot of other people do.
That's right.
And I think you're all a little bit crazy.
And that's okay.
And,
no one's saying you're wrong.
I'm also the person that when I watched The Village, I had nightmares for like a month.
The
Village. So
peak M. Night Shyamalan, in my opinion. By the way, such a good film.
I only watched it because all of our friends were like, let's watch this because it's Halloween time. And then I was like, this is a terrible idea and I'm never doing this again.
Fun story on that. I watched The Village in a history course in my college education.
I'm really glad I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. And this was the framing. The professor was pointing out, I'd never seen it. But in fact, it must have been a new movie. I don't remember my classmates being familiar with it. I don't remember when it came out either. But I don't remember anyone else in the class being like, oh, that old movie. At any rate. So we watched the film. And of course, right, I won't give it away for
anybody that hasn't
any of the kids
seen it.
who hasn't seen this rather
no
old
spoilers
at this point
here.
film. But right when we get to the end and suddenly, the perspective is shifted, right? And there's that whoa moment. The point where that came back into class discussion was, and so let's talk about history. Here's your perspective. Here's what you understand. These are the sources you have access to. What happens when you get the source that suddenly flips it all? Right?
Yeah.
And pointing out how this is how we get to introduce a funky word. I think I've used it before in an epilogue, but historiography, the history of a history.
Yeah.
So, like new sources are found or new angles come forward, or understanding how people in a certain era even viewed their world and why it seems ridiculous and insane to us. But that's because we are looking at it.
We have all this additional information.
And they are like the villagers. Anyhow, okay.
Yeah.
I'll stop myself there. Back to Lovecraft.
I mean, I feel really bad for the guy though. Like with his sleep paralysis, everybody in his life dies or goes insane. And like he dies really young.
And that's where like half of his stories, it's no surprise that the storyline is basically, crap was so scary, you will never even understand the crazy.
Yeah.
You cannot grasp the intellectual existential horror that was this moment. Right? I mean, that was one of the stories we basically did, right? Opening with, I'm ending myself. The morphine's gone.
I don't know what to do anymore.
I can't go on. I saw things you will never believe.
Yeah.
Like I get.
Yeah.
Anyhow. I get where those stories came out of that head.
Yeah.
Which I kind of, to the preface that I put on those, right? As we engaged with his his background a little bit. His
because I think if you're not somebody who's really into that type of writing, like really dark, for lack of a better word. The really
good.
dark stuff, you don't know anything about his life, right?
Yeah.
And or why he wrote the kinds of things he did. And so that was, that made me feel really bad that he like had experienced all of those nightmares that kind of fed this writing.
And he goes to his deathbed, no idea the impact his writing's going to have.
Yeah.
You know,
like a lot of
a conviction that he is about to disappear to oblivion, right?
Forever.
That was very much. He was very clear on his
the cosmic void.
Yes. So that was that.
It's like, well, this is it for me.
And my writing.
And my writing sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
oh man, I'm just okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's go ahead and take one last break, and then it's time to talk about some serious inventors, inventions. And kind of save that to a group together.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We'll be right back. Okay. So, putting a pin in Lovecraft.
Yeah.
I could talk about that all night.
We could. Oh. I'm really glad we're not going to, though.
Okay, one last thing I am going to say.
Gosh.
I remember you texting me as you'd gotten some great candidates for me. Again, thank you so much, Kelsi.
You're very welcome.
Saved my bacon on research.
So glad
on
that I had to dive into all that for you.
Well, thank you again. I remember your text. Okay, here are your stories. I found some good ones for you to pick from. You had me down to like 4, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, and I'm gonna go watch something happy now.
Yep. It's like I read so many really awful things. I need to go like watch a comedy and forget all of this. I'm out.
I'm picturing you sitting there,
sitting in a corner, hugging
the
my
window.
knees.
The window. That joke makes no sense unless you listen to the special
or read it. If you're one of those people that wants to read it,
it's true. It's true. P.S. We're gonna super have to think about the approach next year because we're gonna hit copyright in terms.
Oh,
of the
yeah.
time of So we'll figure that out. But okay, enough Lovecraft. Kelsi, why do you have to keep going on about the Gothic stuff?
I'm the one that's keeping this going.
Okay. So we experienced though some serious invention and forward movement.
Yeah.
And I would like to just kind of connect some dots from Gilded Age.
That was a little bit of a call out. Forward movement.
Ba-dum-bum. You might say it was progressive in a okay. We should not record these this late at night. The dad jokes are strong. But the Gilded Age, it's on the heels of the Progressive Era. These are...
You mean the Progressive Era is on the heels of the Gilded Age.
That is what I mean. We'll go with that. So, point being, they're right next to each other. And when you think about all these inventions, this is all the Second Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, you've got Thomas Edison and the light bulb.
Exactly.
You've got
you put
Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone.
He went by Alva.
Sorry.
Let's not forget the Alva. Alva Edison. Yeah.
Right. That guy with his light bulb, the telephone, you know, just all this stuff that kind of just starts popping up really quickly.
Incredibly so. I mean, the world we inhabit in so many ways, it is all coming out of this turn of the century that, again, gets freaking glossed over.
Yep. They're like, and there were some inventors that did some stuff.
Just the creation of our modern economy, inventions, like massive banking.
Totally fine to
with
just
JP Morgan.
Skim over it.
Yeah, no big deal. All right. Point being, the dots I want to connect is just what it was like to be someone living through these sorts of changes.
I mean, I imagine it's pretty similar to how we've kind of experienced that ourselves a little bit with like the internet and
it's true.
All of that.
We're living through a technological revolution.
That kind of exploded, right? And I imagine that it was fairly similar, probably a little bit more so intense though for them because it was such a, like, we were familiar with electricity and computers kind of, right? But
no, I think you've got a fair comparison point. I mean, you go from your kerosene lamps, you get gas coming into the house. That's cool and exciting.
Yeah.
And then you've got Edison and the boys, right? The boys at Menlo Park. They're tapping into that infrastructure, right? They're running wire basically through that same
the same pipe,
same pipes, displacing gas. So you can't see these like building on kind of components.
Yeah.
And of course, to get direct electricity, and then you get to alternating current, and then it gets to where it flows pretty well.
Yep.
But the early years were rough, right? If you remember the I think it was the end of the first episode before we got to the War of the Currents. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. But
I don't remember it either.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's been a little bit.
It has been. But the end of the first Edison episode, where he has to send one of his guys to JP Morgan's house because the banker, right, his office has been burnt to a crisp by a bad setup. By this generator in his basement. And, it does kind of make me think about, like, we talk about the internet, and that's almost the equivalent, this generator in the basement. You look at freaking internet on our phones, right? We have, the fact we even call them phones, that's an antiquated term that just carried through. We've got the internet almost anywhere and everywhere. Yet, I'm sure you as well. Remember being a kid, right? Like,
yep.
Yep.
Oh, we all know that sound.
You pick up the phone, you need to make a phone call.
Get off the computer.
Come on. Yep.
I have to make a phone call.
Yeah. So all that to say, I do take your point. It was a more physical shift, I guess, is the one thing that I might know. For us, I feel like it's crept a little bit more, and depending on what generation you're in.
Yeah, that's true.
Gen Z probably doesn't feel it the same way.
Oh, no.
No. When you're used to the internet working.
Yeah.
Or even being there, right? I mean,
just kind of take that for granted a little bit.
Yeah. So, similarly, someone born in 1900, kind of like someone born in 2000, they're kind of at those...
Right in the middle of all of this stuff.
Already happening.
Coming out.
But imagine being someone born, say, more mid 1800s to watch this evolution. These are people who remember when the Transcontinental Railroad didn't exist, right? You've got people who grew up knowing that to cross the United States was a months-long journey.
Yeah.
And by the time they're toward the end of their lives, there are telephones. Trains are everywhere. People are flying in the sky.
Yeah.
Light bulbs in the house. Indoor plumbing, which we didn't even...
we didn't even talk about that. But yeah, it's a little crazy to think about how much stuff can change in just such a short amount of time.
So, not to belabor these points, a fun little anecdote, right, from the Henry Ford episode that we truncated.
Yeah.
And so much Henry Ford... again, I actually thought initially, okay, we're going to get through this material. I meant to get to World War I like 2 years ago. So, Wright Brothers, Henry Ford, one episode. Yep. Once again, that was a nope. 2 separate episodes, and it was the right move.
It was. I think it also sets up a little bit, right? We talk about the labor stuff, that he kind of helps change the way that labor works.
Henry Ford?
Yeah, Henry Ford does. Because you're focused on just this one little aspect of the big machine, which makes things more efficient. Which seems a little bit like, for me, I know, thinking about it, I was like, that seems a little counterintuitive. But like, as I think about it more, right, it makes more sense.
Yeah, mass production.
Yeah, mass production and all of that, making it so that, he changes things to a 40-hour work week for his employees instead of 6 days a week, 10 hours a day kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that also kind of takes us back into progressive era as well, right? In terms of the reforms that are being looked for. And again, and we will end up coming back. That episode laid some serious groundwork for changes that we're going to see.
Yeah.
And less enjoyable also laid the groundwork for the anti-Semitism and the rise of the KKK. That
a lot of those very unpleasant, not so pretty
toward the end of the episode, and we'll of course come in far more robustly when we get to that point in the podcast. But you have careers that are just absolutely, the example we gave with the Magneto, right, in the factory. Mm-hmm. These guys, gifted, talented craftsmen, mechanics, making a Magneto one at a time, and now it's just Yep, a few screws in. That's it. Keep it moving.
Yeah.
To the fun story. And then we'll get to the Wright brothers.
Yeah. So we had talked about in that episode the race that
the transcontinental
race.
There were a lot of races, and all of those were good stories. And so many, I was like, dang it.
I can't fit that one in.
Nope. We did one of them as a mini.
Yeah, that's true. But like the transcontinental race, you've got, I think, were there 2 Model T teams?
2 Model Ts, yes.
And so one of these teams is going through, I don't remember exactly where, but like they're going through and it's really stormy and they fall off this cliff.
They freaking drive it's like
14
a 14-foot
cliff. And so luckily, right, they're unharmed because they just like fly out of the car.
Which
no
boggles the mind, right? how yeah.
Yeah.
The crazier thing is that the car is...
No, the car is fine-ish. Like, it can't drive, but there's an easy fix, relatively.
Exactly. All I'm saying is...
it's not totaled.
Please do not try this at home, dear listener.
No.
But I don't picture the modern sedan being driven off a 14-foot cliff, landing, and a mechanic being able to come to be like, oh, yeah.
Just replace a couple of parts. We're good.
It's no big... I had this running by this afternoon. Hardly a cost. Not a problem. It's
great. Sounds
and I get it. The modern car does a lot of things the Model T didn't do, like, getting up to 80 miles an hour.
And heat and air conditioning.
Yes. And frankly, even running the internet. So, but it is just, it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, and then they just wait there and the other team comes and finds them and takes them into the mechanic. And he's like, yep. We can fix that.
But the thing I'd want to highlight in that story is this again shows how bad the roads were. And that's why Henry Ford saw this as such a great opportunity to really sell the Model T.
Like,
I mean,
look,
what sells it better than this, right? Yeah. 2 dudes go off a cliff. By the way, everyone's cool. It's fine.
They're all fine.
No worries, guys. They're okay.
Also, the car?
Not a big deal.
Easy to fix.
I mean, so you turn around and sell that to still... very much shifting, very much changing. This is not Tommy Jefferson's America, but still rather
I'm
rural.
sure there were a lot of people that were kind of like,
farmers.
I don't know how I feel about this new contraption.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you could make plenty of parallels to any era, right? New technology is always kind of scary.
Yeah.
And sometimes rightfully so,
yeah.
and sometimes not so much. We saw that as well with in the Tesla episode.
Yeah.
Suddenly feel the need to clarify. I'm talking about Nikola Tesla.
not the car.
Yes. You know what? That does actually remind me of one thing. The Nikola Tesla, that episode, when alternating current is starting to really get out there.
Yeah.
Remember how the newspapers all covered in great interest the kid that got shocked and killed right by the low-hanging wire. Right? It's new. It's scary.
It's gonna kill your
kids. It isn't direct right now. It's everywhere. Anyhow, that's all. New technology. It's always a little scary, and it makes sense. It's human nature, right? This is a new thing. I don't know it.
Oh
Trepidation.
Yeah. I feel like I'm that person. My husband will be like, "There's this cool new thing that we could try," and I'm like, "I don't know about that. Maybe later."
Oh, well. So, at any rate, the Model T changes the game, and
in a lot of different ways.
So right, from mass production to connecting the nation in a way that trains
couldn't, because they're not going to every single person, right?
Precisely, yeah. So. Okay, let's go ahead and put a pin in that because we do need to wrap up. Oh my goodness, Wright brothers, we left ourselves like no time.
I know, but that one was really fun.
It was fun. It was feel good.
I listened to that one with my kids. I listen to most of them. The kids are kind of around, but that one I specifically would like wait and play when they were in the car so they couldn't escape from me. And they're like, whoa, it wasn't like the airplanes that we fly in. And I'm like, no, it really was not like the airplanes we fly in.
Right.
They're like, well, how did they do that? So we got to
go
back through it.
And it's just incredible. These freaking bicycle shop owners.
Like, we can fly.
Yeah.
We got this. And then how like the measurements they were going off of were wrong. Or
honestly, this is talk about a fine example of how the scientific method is supposed to work, right? Their second flyer was built, quote unquote, closer, better to specs.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as well. okay, tested, set this idea aside. It's time to go back closer to what the first thing was and improve upon that model. And
yeah, the engineer in me was very happy with that.
Yes.
Yeah, getting to see that, I loved it.
Well, and I will say thanks to Scott, a dear friend of mine. He's also an aviator. He flies a small plane, a Cessna. I've been up with him when we did the Transcontinental Railroad. He took me up, and because we're in Utah,
right by that Golden Spike,
and we flew over it. I'll tell you what, that is the way to check out Golden Spike. But I did. I ran some of the sections by him that were into more of the technical stuff, right? Scott, tell me if I'm off.
Yeah.
Tell me if anything.
I want to make sure that I'm saying this right.
Exactly. And, so he did give me some feedback, but of course that's not the same as listening to the episodes. Once he heard it, he gave me a call. It's like, you even got adverse yaw in there. I was so happy. Thank you, sir.
Glad I was able to work that in.
And, I will also say it was fun to get into the different claimants. I'm sure that there are a lot of people in the United States who don't realize, like, you go to Brazil and say that the Wright brothers were the first in flight, you will get some mean stares.
No.
Personally, I see a lot of credibility to the Wright brothers' claim, but I'm absolutely happy to acknowledge these other.
Yeah, there were a lot of people kind of working on the same thing around that time, and which I think is also another thing that I love, because it's like, oh, all of these people had kind of that same thought and are going about it in different ways.
Yeah,
and so seeing the different approaches.
And someone's just gonna pop first. That's all there is to it. But frankly, if it hadn't been the Wrights, it's not like flight wouldn't have happened. We'd have gotten there as a species.
Yeah. I also loved I didn't know that Neil Armstrong took a little.
That's cool.
That was really awesome.
It is.
I mean, I've been to the Johnson Space Center a few times.
Yeah.
Because my husband's from Houston, so we've been down there. But
cool.
That's not, I don't know if they mentioned that there, but I hadn't ever heard that before.
Well,
and so that was a really fun little tidbit. I was glad worked in.
Well, two last thoughts I'll give on the Wright brothers. One, I did not know about in the detail, but very much enjoyed getting into the beef between them and the freaking Smithsonian.
Oh yeah, they're like,
that was awesome.
It's gonna go to England now.
That was hilarious to me. Just that the director, like, no, we're totally gonna credit our last, our last.
The other director.
That super crashed. No,
it's fine.
It's fine. It was
flew.
I saw it in the air.
That counts.
Well, he didn't, to be clear. Right.
It was in the air.
Oh, but
that one was fun. And it didn't. Yeah, once Orville was dead, that's when it came back.
Yeah. So. Both brothers were dead, and then it came back. And there was the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah, they're
like such an own.
To say,
if you do not acknowledge the Wright brothers first,
it doesn't come.
It doesn't come. Okay, fine. So the other thing is, the close relationship. This kind of came out in the episode. I was actually trying to highlight it as much as it was appropriate to do. Right, again, the constraints of trying to fit so much in an episode. Read David McCull's book if you want more detail.
Yep.
It's the winner. I mean, yes, looked at so many other sources.
He just does a really good job with.
Yes.
We've used a lot of his books as sources.
I felt his passing when he when he moved on this year. I will say that man is an intellectual hero of mine. Such an excellent book, though, and all that to say, in the book, he does a great job of bringing out Kate, their sister.
Yeah.
She is an integral part of the story. And of course, she's not a Kitty Hawk, and so, you're not going to see her so much.
Well, she's not a Wright brother, right? She's the sister.
That's right. She's the sister. But, the letters that Orville, they're sending back and forth.
Yeah.
So much of the records that we have are actually their correspondence as they're writing. And then, she's doing the background work. And I mean, their relationship, as I could see it, it was certainly not we'll just dump on Kate sort of thing.
No, she was really supportive of
super supportive.
That was one thing I really liked about seeing that family dynamic was just like
That's
they're
what I
all
loved about that episode.
just
honestly.
really happy and supportive of each other, and like just this great tight family.
So here, Will and Orv don't go to college, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe it's there and I'm not aware of it, but in all of my research, I didn't see any sort of like dumping on them, like
Shit, you didn't go to college.
So yeah, like that wasn't there. It felt very, you do you. That's great. We support each other. We have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Kate goes to college, like trailblazer in the era.
Oh yeah.
And she had a reputation as a teacher, just breaking smart ass boys. Like they gave her all the hard ones. She just worked them over. She just seemed like such a fascinating, fun person. Yeah, and she, I don't want to say like enjoyed it like she enjoyed, she wasn't like a mean person. Just
but she
grew up with
she had 4 brothers.
Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, no problem.
I got this.
Yeah, little teenage boy. Yeah, no sweat. But the last thing I'll say, I don't remember if it was Will or Orv, but one of them made a comment at some point about needing to write as many letters as he did because he never wanted Kate to feel left out. Like, in his mind, it was much of a part. It was the right siblings.
Yeah, she was as much a part of all of that as the two of them were.
Yes.
And
yeah. Well, and later, and they take their dad up in the air, like again, just
and that was one thing that didn't get to make it, and I think, but like that story of flying with their dad, but
what's that gotta be like? I mean,
oh yeah,
well done, son.
Good job. What do you even say?
Oh. Well, Kelsi, we went a few minutes longer than we intended to. And I didn't even talk about the election of 1912. Holy cow. Okay, very, very briefly.
Educate me, because I know nothing about this.
You haven't seen
I haven't seen this one or heard this one yet.
Yeah, it is recorded. We'll get it briefly. But one of my absolute favorite elections. I know that's like the nerdiest thing that someone could say.
I wasn't going to say it.
But. So fascinating. I mean, oh man, the things to say. I won't be repetitive to what's in there and the obvious, or try not to be, but on one level, it shows the power of the party machine. Mm-hmm. Teddy Roosevelt, TR, the Colonel, the Rough Rider. This man is way more popular than, with all due respect, William Howard Taft. Poor dude. Like, it's like,
he's kind of just.
He's in.
He has to feel like he's up against this impossible thing.
Well, he's in Roosevelt's shadow, and they were good friends,
Yeah.
So there's that whole personal dynamic. But all that to say, the party wants Will. Yeah, they do not. And TR's come back from Africa more progressive, right? So that's part of the interesting dynamic here is that Will is convinced that he is carrying forward the policies of Teddy Roosevelt as they were handed off to him. Mm-hmm. And here comes TR back from Africa, like, what fresh hell is this? What have you done?
I changed my mind.
You're messing it up. You went all sorts of conservative here. He's like, what? No, I'm doing what we did. Look at all the trusts I've been busting. I'm busting trusts all day, every day. What's the deal? And not that they're actually talking to each other, because heaven forbid they just talk to each other.
Oh yeah,
that could have resolved a lot of things. But he's probably gone into a more conservative place. TR's gone to a more progressive place, and this friendship is just torn apart. But you also see the party machine that says no, we are not interested in TR, even though it's clear that the people are.
Oh yeah.
The Republican base, when you look at the primaries, which this is the emergence of the primary system as opposed to the caucus system. Mm-hmm. And it really looks like the Republican Party, the average members, they want Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
They don't want William Howard Taft, no disrespect. But the machine is like, no.
Taft it is.
Incumbent. He stays. Yes, we like ourselves some Will. So Will does... There's so much messiness in the convention, and Will certainly wasn't the dishonest one. To what extent there was dishonesty, but Will gets the nomination. To see a third party emerge, I mean, this Bull Moose campaign.
This is where the Bull Moose comes in.
Yes, it bests one of the two national parties. I mean, it's not just a significant third party, which those elections happen.
Yeah,
but actually bumps the Republican Party down to slot number 3 in terms of the head count. possibly hands the election to the Democrats. If Teddy had been the nominee for the Republican Party, chances, as I look at it, and as a lot of other historians look at it, I'm sure there have got to be, I didn't read any that were like, oh, no. Woodrow would have super won. I haven't seen that analysis out there, but I'll make an allowance that maybe someone thinks that. But it's impossible to say just how different things could have gone. And then you have TR as a wartime president. 1912, 1914, because my guess, even if he was one term, which I doubt, one term, after that.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, now I've gotten into counterfactual stuff. But he was gun-ho for World War I. He super critiques Woodrow Wilson for not doing
anything sooner.
Not doing sooner. And when he gets in, he doesn't do it well enough. I mean, TR's just always like,
I could have done this better.
No one presidents the way I presidented. I did the best presidenting. So
yeah.
That was maybe a little hard. I love TR. I'm sure that's coming across.
It's very clear.
Yeah. But it's just hard to even begin to say how different it would have been. And just the fact that it is the election where the Socialist Party, not someone who's being described as a socialist, I mean, someone who's running on the Socialist Party platform, right?
Yeah.
Gets 6% of the popular vote. That is an insane number for the United States. So this is the peak of socialism up to the day we're recording this in terms of showing in a presidential election. So that's just a lot of fascinating moving parts. Yes. All right. I'm super going to stop now with one last story.
Oh boy.
And that is just because I couldn't fit this in, and I want listeners to know this. I might work it into a later episode if I can. But years down the road, last few months of Roosevelt's life, he and William Taft, they've started writing letters a little bit. Kind of
like how John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were.
Exactly, right? So they kind of start to build bridges again.
I guess we can be friends again.
They bump into each other in a hotel. Everyone who witnesses this, literally the room stops and people applaud because they shake hands, right? They had this great chat and this great visit, and a few months later, he's dead. Teddy's dead. And William Taft just bawls his eyes out over his grave at the funeral. Because
really, that was his friend.
It was his friend. And despite that,
even though they had that
election,
falling out.
Yep.
I think there are some people in your life that you're like, even though we don't talk anymore, I still care about you.
Yes. Even if I'm hating
I hate
so much
some
of what's going on right
now.
now.
You are doing right now, but you, that
the
relationship,
things we went through at
this
point in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, for real. I'm gonna stop talking. So sorry, that was a long epilogue, but it was a long volume.
There was a lot of stuff that got covered in there.
We will go ahead and hang it up at this point. Just so people know what they can look forward to, we've got, of course, the Christmas special. Start of the year, I think it'll kind of be something of a tradition. That's when I do a few of my second edition, because I care so much about those early episodes and I can do better with them.
Yeah.
And I need to do it. So we'll do 2 or 3 of those. Of course, I'll give you a date as to when we're going to officially start the next volume. It will at the latest be February. And it is time. So many of you have been asking for so long. It is time, my friends. World War I.
It's coming. So,
with that, thank you, and join me in 2 weeks. I'd like to tell you a story. History That Doesn't Suck is created and hosted by me, Greg Jackson. Special guest, Kelsi Dines. Production by Airship. Sound design by Molly Bach. Theme music composed by Greg Jackson. Arrangement and additional composition by Lindsey Graham of Airship. HTDS is supported by fans at patreon.com/history that doesn't suck. My gratitude to you kind souls providing the funding helps keep going. Thank you. And a special thanks to our patrons whose monthly gift puts them at producer status. Amanda Bragg, Art Lane, Ben Kelly, Bethan Christiansen, Bill Thompson, Bob Drazovich, Brad Herman, Shannon Stewart, Charles and Shirley Clendenden, Chris Mendoza, Christopher Cottle, Christopher Pullman, David Aubrey, David DeFazio, Durante Spencer, Dex Jones, Donald Moore, Henry Brunges, James Black, Janie McCreary, Jeffrey Moots, Jennifer Magnolia, Joe Dovis, John Frugal Dougal, John Keller, John Rudlevich, John Schaefer, Juliana Taper, Karen Bartholomew, Kristen Kenny, Kyle Decker, Lawrence Neubauer, Liz McNeil, Mark Ellis, Matthew Mitchell, Melanie Jan, Michael Umbright, Nick Navoda, Ogade Khan, Paul Borowski, Paul Goringer, Rich Miller, Rick Brown, Roberto Senzi, Sarah Trewick, Sean Peppert, Sean Baines, Sue Lane, Creepy Girl, Thomas Budd, Thomas Stewart, Trisha Black, Todd Kine, and Victoria Bennett. Join me in 2 weeks where I'd like to tell you a story.